May of 2020, the world economy is melting down. And you say, that's great, but we ought to let oil and gas companies go broke. Did you really mean that?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're diving into something that has the political world buzzing. Senator Kennedy had an intense back and forth with a federal nominee, Mrs. Sarah Bloom Raskin, and let me tell you, it was fiery. So, what exactly happened? Well, sit tight and grab a coffee because we're going to break this down and take a closer look at the explosive exchange. Mrs. Raskin penned an op-ed, which Senator Kennedy got a hold of, and let's just say, he had a lot to say about it. The issue? She seemed to suggest that oil and gas companies should be allowed to fail. Now, oil and gas are a big deal in this country, so this was a huge point of contention. Senator Kennedy doesn't waste any time. He jumps right in, asking Mrs. Raskin if she truly meant what she wrote. You can see the tension in the room as he repeatedly presses her on the matter. "Did you really mean that?" he asks. And let's be honest, Kennedy's style is always direct. At this point, Mrs. Raskin responds, trying to explain the context behind her op-ed. She talks about the Federal Reserve not being in the business of picking winners and losers. But Kennedy isn't satisfied. He keeps pushing her, saying, "Except for oil and gas, you said they ought to be allowed to go broke." Now Kennedy is really hammering down on what Raskin wrote. He pulls up her exact words from the op-ed, pointing out how it looks like she's advocating for the oil and gas industry to fail. She tries to explain that her article wasn't recommending that. She insists it was about the Federal Reserve's emergency lending programs, but Kennedy just isn't letting up. He wants her to own it. And you can see his frustration grow as the two go back and forth. He even tells her, "I would respect you more if you owned it." Oof, that was a tough moment.
May of 2020, the world economy is melting down because government shut it down. We're trying to hold it together with baling wire, duct tape, spit, and happy thoughts. And you say, that's great, but we ought to let oil and gas companies go broke. Did you really mean that?
Well, thank you, Senator Kennedy.
You're welcome.
For that question. And the Federal Reserve has particular mandates set out by law.
But I know about all that, but did you mean it? You said it, here it is, big as Dallas. I read the op-ed. You said, save everybody but the oil and gas industry and let them go broke. Did you really mean that?
So I have been clear on my views. The whole point of the op-ed was that the Fed should not pick winners and losers.
Except for oil and gas. You said they ought to be allowed to go broke.
The Fed should not pick or favor any sector at all.
Then why did you say it?
The Fed is not in the business of choosing winners and losers.
Then why did you recommend to them that they let oil and gas go broke?
I did not recommend.
Yes, ma'am, I read the op-ed. There it is. It's. I'm not going to quote it to you, but Senator Toomey pointed out. Why did you mean it?
Senator Kennedy, I want you to understand the role of the proper role of the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve should not be choosing winners and losers.
Yes, ma'am. So you disagree with the editorial?
The editorial was one that I wrote, and I wrote it in the context of the Federal Reserve's emergency lending facilities. This was a special program set up by the CARES Act, by the Congress, that appropriated taxpayer money. This was an issue quite unlike the issue of supervision.
And you said don't give the money to oil and gas. Let them go broke, because in my opinion, they're bad for the environment.
In the last moments, the hearing chair cuts in, telling Kennedy that his time is up. But Kennedy, being the firebrand that he is, points out that both he and Senator Toomey went over their allotted time, so why shouldn't he? Classic Kennedy. So, what do you think? Was Senator Kennedy right to go off on Mrs. Raskin like that? Did she really mean what she wrote, or was it all just misunderstood context? This debate definitely brought up some important questions about the role of the Federal Reserve and how we handle industries like oil and gas during economic crises. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. And hey, if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe and give this video a thumbs up. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.